Well, welcome to a brand new episode of the Front End Happy Hour podcast. When you're feeling burnt out or needing a change, it's often very hard to know what to do next. One solution, it might be a very privileged solution, but one solution is take a sabbatical, take a break, leave your job. In this episode, we are joined by Jennifer to talk with us about what it's like to take a break and not work. It is somewhat abnormal, and I feel like we should normalize this, and we'll be going into this topic really well, and being able to share the pros and cons and what it's really like to leave your job and do nothing. And that's what we're going to be covering in this episode. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us. I know you and I met a few weeks back, and you'd found out I was taking a break from, left Netflix and wasn't working. And you just had some amazing questions for me. And then it came up that, oh, yeah, like I did that. And so some of the things that you were asking me, I'm like, how does she know what that feeling's like? So it was really cool to get your perspective on it. And I'm so excited to do this episode. But yeah, before we begin, love to hear a brief introduction of who you are, what you do, and what your favorite happy hour beverage is.
So thank you, Ryan, for having me. My name is Jennifer. I'm from Houston, Texas. I'm a front-end developer at a Web3 agency called Halden. And my favorite happy hour beverage is probably a Moscow Mule.
It's a good choice.
Like
I
the
feel like
ginger
that's
beer.
it's a popular one that pops up on this podcast. I feel like just recently in the last couple episodes, I've had a few people say that one. It is a solid drink. All right, well, let's dive in. Thanks so much, Jennifer, for joining us. Before we dive in, let's give introduction of the panelists. Cole, it's you and me, but Cole, you want to start it off?
Hi, everyone. My name's Cole. You might formally know that I've worked at Netflix, but as of today, I am starting my first day of sabbatical. I'm super excited to be here to talk about that and learn from Jennifer and Ryan about how they have been making it work.
Right on. Yeah, I feel like we're all coming at this at different points. Jennifer took her break and is back to work, and I'd say middle of the way. I still feel like I'm still targeting that year, and we'll talk about like how sometimes that can be hard too. And then Cole, you're brand new to this, so it'll be really interesting. But yes, I'm the host of Front End Happy Hour. I'm Ryan Burgess. Let's dive in. Jennifer, Cole, I guess myself too. What inspired you to take the break in the first place?
Yeah, so I think at the time I just started not feeling very happy where I was working. And it was my first software developer job. So at the time I was like very happy. I made the career transition. I feel like when you're first starting out or transitioning into tech, like that first job was just like very exciting. That excitement wore off over time. And I feel like I didn't really notice it, like day by day, kind of just started accumulating until eventually I was just like, I woke up and I just was not feeling very happy anymore. And, I journal like almost every day, and I actually, journaled throughout the whole break. And so like I was reading back like my old entries, and I could just progressively see myself getting unhappier and unhappier. And then, it didn't really occur to me until I was feeling worse that it was like, okay, I'm not happy where I am. I don't know why. I'm trying to like make it work. I'm trying to like think positively, try different things, but it seemed like I couldn't shake off that feeling. And eventually, I thought about, what, maybe I should take a break. And that was terrifying because I never done that. And I didn't know anyone else who did that. And it never occurred to me to like leave a job because I feel like I worked really hard out of college, like grinded, and I, put in a lot of work. So the thought of just like not working and leaving, I was like, what was that? And of course I turned to the internet because there was no one else to go to. And the internet has a lot of opinions. I read a lot of Reddit posts, and a lot of people were like, don't do it, don't take a break. I think the scariest part was like I was taking a break without a job lined up. So that was like, that was different, right? And so a lot of advice you'll get on these forums are like, don't do it without taking a break. Like, don't do it. It's like, if get a job first. Like people I talked to were like, you should get a job first. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, that's fair. That's good advice. But I think it was almost to a point where like I was getting unhappier, and I was like, okay, I feel like I need to leave now, and I don't think I can wait for like another job lined up. So luckily I had like some extra money to set aside to kind of give me the cushion. And then that from there, after like talking to some friends and really thinking about it, kind of reached conclusions like, okay, this is what I want to do. Like I need to take a break. I need to just figure out what I want to do, because it feels like I just didn't know, and it just kind of morphed into this feeling of like being lost and unhappy. And like when you're lost and unhappy, like how can you do well at your job? And I wanted to do well at my job, but I can't do that anymore if I'm like feeling this way. So I was like, I don't want to be at a point where I'm doing so bad at work that they would like let me go. Like that's the last thing I wanted. Like I should give my best, and I felt like I couldn't give my best anymore. So that's not fair for them or me. So I was like, I think I should leave because I don't feel like I want to be here, and I think someone who wants to be there deserves to be there. So that's kind of what led me to take my break.
I loved how you said that, because not only are you seeing all the things that are affecting you, but you also talked about, Jennifer, how you leaving to find out what's best for you also gave somebody else an opportunity to find what's best for them. And so in a way, you're helping yourself, you're helping others too. And I like that.
Yeah, and I think it's so powerful. Like I love the journaling aspect of it too, and just being able to like look back on it. That is something I've never done. Like I've never really taken stock of like how I feel or like what that day to day looks like, or like writing a journal. And I love that that is just like such a great way to like have the data to say like it's not working anymore. But I definitely felt something similar. Like just hearing you talk through that is like, being at Netflix, that was honestly one of my all-time favorite jobs. There were so many amazing things that I loved about it, all the amazing people I worked with, the culture, just so many great things. And so it wasn't like I was like, hey, this company sucks, I need to get out the door. But things were changing. Like Netflix is significantly changing in the sense that it's growing as a company. And so there's a lot of shifts in culture, and there's just things that are changing. And so that to me was one aspect of it. But for me too, it was just like, I wasn't feeling challenged anymore or creative. I think the biggest one was creative. I realized like a lot of the scaling and things that have happened or changes, there was a lot of process that was being put in place that felt very stifling to me as a leader. Like it was just like, I'm not using my brain. I'm not being strategic. I'm like, fill out this form. Oh, Ryan, you didn't update this, and this in the 6 documents. I'm like, well, I did it in the 4. I didn't know there was 2 other ones. And so there's all this like, it's just like, wait, am I just like making updates places? Like it didn't feel like the normal thing that I was doing. And so I felt like a little less creative. And then realizing that my son actually needed a little more support at home. And so Netflix was like almost like, pulling me in more directions. My son's pulling me in the other. And it was like, wait a second, this makes it really easy too. Is like, I just, I can't be pulled in both. I'm not going to be able to do both well. And similar to you, Jennifer, it's like, I want to show up well for work. And so it was just like, it made an easy choice to choose my son over work. And that I think also having that mental break is so powerful. So I echo a lot of what you said.
I think so too. And I just wanted to add, like, it's interesting hearing you, Jennifer, describe you reflecting on who you were through your journal entries. Because after I started this path, I looked back through my photos and I saw just how unhappy I was. And I think about what you're both saying in terms of like, you couldn't give your all to work. I struggle with giving more of myself to work. When I'm burnt out, I try and put myself more into this role, more into what I think is doing the right thing. And that burns me out even more, because when you're burnt out, you're not seeing the results that you're looking for, like you're saying, Jennifer, or you might not be showing up in the way that you want to. In my situation, it just felt like this isn't working anymore. And for me to go on a year sabbatical, like Ryan said, is a privilege. I had been saving up for a while. I kind of knew this was coming because I've been working full time since I was 15 years old. I've never had a break. I had to kind of, work my way outside of my family home, provide for myself, me and my 2 dogs. And I'm really grateful for just the opportunity to talk to you both and hear about, what's going well on this kind of sabbatical in terms of prioritizing yourself. Because I'm just starting now. And I realize from what Jennifer said, I just wasn't living for maybe like 6 months. I was just kind of on autopilot.
Yeah, I think that autopilot, Cole, is a good way to describe it, and where you're not maybe reflecting on like what's good and you're just kind of keep repeating, and it's that vicious cycle. I think similar to what you've both said, just reminded me, and something that I've definitely thought about. Maybe I'm not someone who's writing in a journal or thinking about it, but I've always really love the quote that Steve Jobs has said when he went to, I think he did, it was a commencement speech that he did for Stanford many years ago, but he said that his way of reflecting on what he likes to do, is he asking himself if he likes doing what he's doing. He says,
if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something.
and it's like, if you keep hearing that, no, I don't want to do this today over and over and over again, like something needs to change. And I think that quote resonates so well, where it's like, you may not know, but you should be asking that question. Like, make sure to check in on yourself to say, like, is this really what I want to do? Or you're stuck on autopilot.
Yeah, I feel like you get so into the day-to-day and like you kind of start, like, it's so routine that you kind of just don't realize you're slowly kind of like losing yourself or like losing direction because you're just doing the motions and you don't really take this time to just stop and think like, oh yeah, like, is this what I want? Like, am I happy? Like, how am I feeling? Stuff like that, But I really like that quote. I think it's a great quote. Like, I have to look up that commencement speech and watch it.
Yeah,
I mean, it
like
is
that
good.
too. I'll also say, like, hearing you both describe how you kind of realized you had to take yourself out of the situation, and me not realizing that once I got out of the situation and I started to focus on myself and work was no longer even a factor in my mind, it was just a complete 180. It was like I was almost like just in jail in my mind in terms of like what I was prioritizing for myself versus my whole life just revolved around work, routine, and schedules. And now I'm on like day 5, 6, or 7, but it's been amazing because all of my time is my own. I eat it up like an ice cream cone. I just, I don't think about where I'm going next. And it was a huge relief. I was just so happy. It's like, it's finally my time.
Yeah, I remember I think it was one of the first days was I obviously not feeling creative. That has been part of my journey to like, I got to be creative because that's something that makes me feel happy. And so I've, always do creative things throughout, even while I'm working or on the job. But I was like, I'm going to take some photos and just kind of hang out. And I remember going and hanging out by like the Golden Gate Bridge and just like sitting there and taking some photos, and just like it felt so great and free. Like it was almost immediate. Like it was just knowing that like you're done. You've kind of wrapped up all that you need to wrap up, and you are now not working. That hit me quickly, and I felt that freedom. I don't know, Jennifer, how you felt right at the start.
No, I felt the exact same way. Like it's like, I don't know how to describe it. Like it's so liberating. I guess like it's like kind of the feeling you feel when you're like when you graduate school, you're like out for summer break and you're like, yes, like I don't have to do any of this. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to think about it. Like Cole says, like my time's my time.
Yes.
And it's just nice to just not, just put myself first and think about the things I want to do and spend that time. And, like the whole day, like everything is what you want, it's your choice. But yeah, it's very liberating. And there's like this kind of like weight off your shoulder. You kind of feel like you feel much lighter, feel like all the things you're worrying about are just gone. And I feel like there's like a lot more clarity in like what you're thinking about, and it's just you and your thoughts, and getting to spend time like really, improving your relationships, with like family and friends. Like you have time for that before you kind of just push those things off. Like there's so many things you push off things for like work, but like now that you don't have that, you can do those things. You can say yes because now you don't have that excuse of like, oh, I'm too busy. Like, oh, like I have things I need to do. It's like, no, I can actually enjoy these things without having to put it off as like second priority or something.
I love that because it's like exactly that feeling. It's just like this weight has been lifted. And I feel like your brain works clear. Like, I don't know, like hard to explain, but I definitely felt like I was just like thinking more, reflecting, and just like calmer. My mental health, I would say, within the first few months, but like even to this point, has been just amazing. Like I eat better. I like exercise a little better. I'm still not as good on the exercising front, but I mean, I go on hikes and like take a lot of photos, go for
Got
walks
a
and
lot
things like
going on.
that, you know, and I'm chasing kids around. So I'm like, there's always something. I'm just, you know, but I have definitely been like actually eating better. Like when I was at work, my wife has a pretty demanding job. I have a demanding job. It was like a lot. And like, I was even just like eating out all the time. Like, it was just like, I didn't have the energy to cook or plan meals. And like, it sounds stupid that I couldn't, you know, get my head behind that, but it was something that I just was like, didn't prioritize. And so there's certain things like, I think just living is something you're prioritizing. You don't have anything else preventing you from doing that. There's still hard things you have to deal with in your life, but it's like just the fact of living is kind of powerful. I don't know if you both have felt that.
Yeah, and I just wanted to add real quick, it's also challenging. There are certain dimensions here. I'm a single guy. I don't take care of children. So for me, getting burnt out while at work was like, I'm not taking care of my own needs. I'm not sleeping well. I'm getting inconsistent exercise. I just, you know, when making that transition, like you're both saying, your priorities shifts, your values change. It's no longer that work is a factor at all. So all these problems that, you know, have been at the back of your mind, you know, overriding your sleep, overriding your habits, that's just not a factor anymore. And so to hear you both describe it, it was kind of a similar feeling for me. It was like, you know, this is no longer in my mind. I can take naps. I can think about what my body is feeling right now because I'm not preoccupied with some meeting or some Slack message or something that really just isn't even real when you think about it. It's like, what is real? It's how we feel. It's how we relate to each other. It's how we're getting up and enjoying our days. And I think just corporate work culture has installed so many grind-oriented behaviors in us that the pandemic forced us to look at and say, okay, is this the best thing for us? And we're getting to this point where people are burning out, they're leaving their jobs. But I think even beyond this conversation, people are generally realizing this isn't the way that we want to live our lives. We don't want to be stuck to the grind. We want to be focused on our needs first.
Happiness?
Yeah, right. Is that so bad?
No, yeah, it's crazy because like it's like I feel like it's the thing we're all like striving towards, happiness, but like for some reason it seemed so difficult at times. And I feel like based on your cycle, like I feel like that's why a lot of people now look for jobs that have a good work-life balance because they realize now that like no, yeah, it's not like this grind culture, this work culture isn't good. It's unhealthy. It doesn't like it. People want to live their lives, you know, like it shouldn't revolve around work. And we spend so much of our lives working that like, you know, is it so hard or is it so bad to ask just for like an extra hours just to like enjoy life a little, you know? And it's crazy. You have to kind of get to a point where like you have to take a big break to get that. So I think that's why when I was like getting to the next thing, it was like, okay, I want to maintain at least some balance still, you know, because although I feel like I would take another break just because it's kind of fun, but like, you know, like I can't take a break that often, but yeah, just being able to keep that balance. And then maybe down the line, if I feel a big change in my life that I need like more time to like think and reflect, that's probably when I'll be like, you know, take a break because it's not so scary anymore because you're a big one.
Yeah, I think it's like, it's good to know that you can do that too, right? Like after doing it, right, Jennifer? It's like, you're like, I love that. I want, you know, you still have to work. Like, you know, we need to be able to put food on the table, all the things and live that way. But I think it's just, I even like that you're like, I approach work a little bit differently. And I think that is a healthy learning from just taking that break that I'm already feeling, even though I'm not back to work, is I'm like, oh, I will do things differently just so that I don't get in that space or just be a little more aware how I want to show up. I also think like, I shouldn't say that companies don't do this. There are companies that do. There's even like countries that approach this differently than United States. But it's like being a little more thoughtful on being able to give people that time or breaks. Like vacations just aren't enough for it. And being able to have some of those like sabbaticals is really key. I actually think if I went back to Netflix today, I would be a lot better than I was when I left. Meaning is like my head is so much clearer and I feel like I could do my job that much better because
Yeah.
of it. And so I think like companies could actually benefit. And I know they're not going to see that necessarily or say, yeah, we're just going to give people time. It's hard to measure what the benefits that you get from it. But personally, for me, I'm like, I know that having that space has already made me better. And I'm excited for whatever it is I do next, that I will be better because of it. So I think that's cool. And then Jennifer, you and I started this conversation or, a couple of weeks ago when we had met. One thing that stuck out to me that you'd asked me something about, like, how did people react? Like, when you say like, I'm leaving, they're like, okay, where are you going next? Like, what's next? Like, I got so many different questions. I got asked if I'm going to go, what company I'm going to, am I going to go back to being an engineer? Am I not going to be a manager anymore? There's so many things. Or then I got some of the questions from like family. I remember my mom's text to me at first was like, oh, that's awesome. Glad you're able to take a break. I think the next day she texted me, she's like, are you sick and dying? Like something like dark like that. She was like, I just want to make sure. Yeah, it was like, no, Mom, I'm fine. Or I remember my close friend, his mom, funny enough, it must be this mom thing, but his mom said to me, oh, you're leaving in this climate, right? Because it's like, we all know that's not great, but it's just like, it's funny hearing people's reactions. Cole, I know you're fairly early to this, but you might have had some reactions already. Jennifer, like, did you had some of these reactions too? And I'd be curious to kind of hear about them.
Yeah, it's curious because like I also got like a variety of reactions. I mean, most I got were supportive. I talked to my friends. I feel like they're a lot similar boat where they're like in the day-to-day grind, and I'm sure that's something that has maybe crossed their mind once or twice. I know I talked to my sister. She was also kind of like in a rough stage at work where she was also kind of thinking about it. I think the person I was terrified most was to tell my mom, and she reacted in a not great way, and it was like very emotional. Like I started crying, and I didn't want to cry, but it was like all these built up emotions just kind of like exploded. And like I'm a first generation immigrant. She came over from Vietnam, and she worked long hours for us. So different culture, mentality. So she couldn't understand why I couldn't just like work through it, like why I couldn't just, toughen it out. And I think that disconnect also made it very hard for me because I was like, she couldn't really understand where I was coming from. So that was the whole thing. But like, it was funny because the next day I had a little vacation with my boyfriend, went to like a getaway cabin, which was like perfect because I didn't have any kind of internet or technology, and I just had my journals. I just journaled, and I just really like, was reflecting. And I think once I told her, and she was the last person I like kind of told, and besides my company, that I was quitting. It was like I think that was like one of the last hurdles. And once I accepted that, I told her, it was like, okay, yeah, this is it. I'm doing this. Like it was like I told her, this is real now. And then I told my company, and then they were very understanding. But yeah, she was the worst reaction, and I knew it was just going to be the worst reaction, and it was just as bad as I thought. But she kind of accepted it. She was like, okay, just whatever your next role is, like find it. Like don't just like sit here and bum around. And I was like, yeah, that's yeah.
That's cool.
Typical mom concerns. I love it.
Typical mom. Yeah, I feel like my mom probably reacted and like, what are you doing? Like, should I be worried? Like, kind of way. Yeah.
But it's also cool that like as soon as you realized what was happening, you went and took some time to yourself, and like you sat with yourself and allowed it to be just yourself. Because I feel like when big changes happen, you have a lot of people weighing in, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it kind of worked out that I told her. Maybe I planned it that way. I can't remember if I was like I was gonna leave. Because I think if I sat in the house after I told her, it was not gonna be good. Because like I think when I left, I couldn't even like look at her. Like I just said bye. I just like walked out the door, and then I came back, and I was like, okay, I feel like much better because it's just like I was crying and I woke up and my eyes were just like puffy and it was like, I felt like a mess. And so, yeah, having that time just away and like, yeah, no one can contact me because like there's no internet in the woods. So, and it's like those cabins where like you have to put your phone in a box, so you can't touch it kind of
Oh,
thing.
wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. Maybe we should recommend that. Yeah, like if you're about to quit and you just need to get away from it, you should just go out to nature and just no internet and just fuck everyone out. But yeah,
Yeah. So before you quit your job, that's some good advice. Like before you quit your job, the advice should be like go out to the woods, shut off your phone, then decide if you want to quit.
Yeah. Or also after you tell your mom, you should just like
Yeah.
I mean,
just
I like
that whole cabin for a whole week. Rent the cabin for the whole week.
I mean, I liked your approach, Jennifer. You were a better like daughter than I am a son. I just quit and then told my mom, right? Like I was like, she knew after the fact. To be honest, I think the only one I told, was like my wife. Like I let her know immediately, and obviously like we figured that one out together. And then it was probably telling my manager was probably one of the next people. Like I don't think I told anyone really, which is funny. Like you and I took different approaches on that one.
Yeah, thanks, Ryan.
So you just pulled a fast one over everyone, and you're like, "Hey,
pretty much." It just, it hit me like a rock. Like it was just like if something in me just said it's time, and like it hit me hard, and it was just like okay, like, and it was cool to kind of just act on that and to tell, obviously, to have that conversation with my wife. That's the most important thing. And so we had that conversation, and that was it.
I mean, it's interesting hearing both of your experiences. For me, I haven't told family yet. They don't know, and they probably won't for a while because why bother? I don't need the weigh-in. I don't need the judgmental, what are you going to do next? And it's more so like this is the first time in my life I'm actually like not caring about what anybody else thinks and just focusing on what I think and what I feel. And that's all that matters. But then right after, the day it happens, all of my friends texted me the very next day. They're like, "Are you okay? Are you like, what have you been up to? What's been going on the last 24 hours?" Because I'm so goal, task, and objective oriented that the idea of not working was just not even scary to me, but it was scary to everybody else because I haven't done that before. And what will happen? Will I fly off the deep end? Will I go have a bender, go out, drinking? It ended up being that it was just another day, and I went to the beach and finally just got to, feel like I was living for myself and not really just like, okay, I have to go do this meeting. I have to go listen to this person tell me or whatever. And I would say to anybody listening, if you can have that opportunity to take any kind of break, just start with what Jennifer said earlier. Start with how you feel. Take account of how you feel, and then watch as you make a change and then your feelings change as well. And for me, it was like a huge weight off my shoulders. I've been so happy ever since, just like, here's what I'm doing next. I'm going to the zoo. So if you get that chance and you have the privilege to take it, because it is a privilege, then I highly recommend it.
So, we're talking about all the amazing things that come along with this decision. And, it's, there's always some pros and cons. I'd be curious to hear, I think we've talked about some of the challenges that come along with, just telling people around us, and that it's like, it is abnormal, or it's not, that doesn't feel like the norm. And so you'd have to deal with some of these conversations of explaining yourself. And quite frankly, I struggle still to this day, like knowing exactly what it was. It just kind of was a trigger that went off, and it was hard to explain at the start. So that was a challenge for me. But I'm curious, what are some other challenges that you've all faced, taking the break, leading up to the break? Obviously, there are challenges that come with it. It's not just perfect.
So leading up to it, I think, we definitely touched on that. If you take the break, the cons, I think for me, I knew, well, it's not forever. You're right. You don't take the break forever. So it was kind of like, okay, well, I know I'm going to need a job. So it was kind of like getting ready for that. That was one. The second one's probably like, well, I guess they kind of relate to each other, but the second one's probably like, oh, I'm running out of money. Not really money coming in. It doesn't feel very nice anymore. And it kind of adds like this layer of stress as as you get closer to like you see your bank account draining and you're kind of getting further in, you're like, oh, okay, like this doesn't last forever, and then I need a job because I need money. And then you're kind of starting the job search. And I feel like one of the things they're going to ask is like, oh, why did you leave? So answering that question. So then like trying to really understand why you left and how to explain that in a way that doesn't seem like you're going to like leave them anytime soon or something like that you're like a risk or anything. And then I think those were the two biggest things for me. Other than that, I was having a great time actually. Just like the day-to-day things. I was reading around my journal. I was like, what was I doing? And I think it was just really simple things, but it was really nice. But I guess those were the two biggest things too, because like otherwise, like if we had all the money in the world, then no one would. we would all just keep taking a break, and no one would work. But like we need money, so then we work, and we don't want to have to take a break. Yeah, so those are the two biggest risks for me. Those are the cons. They're very big cons, right? Like you need to work to survive, and the pros, I would say, other than what we touched on, I really got that time to ask what I wanted to do and figure out who I was. And I feel like that's where journaling came in more. I think I got even more into it. Like I would just journal, I had all these times in the day to just journal and just really write and reflect. And it's crazy because I read it back now. I'm like, oh, okay, like this is what I was thinking and how I was feeling. And it's crazy. Like some of the things, like I feel like I took a break trying to see if I could answer that question. And I don't think I really answered it. I think I clarified it some more. And I feel like I still ask that question to myself even to this day. And I'm still trying to figure myself out and like try different things. And I think I just realized like that it's like a never ending journey. Like, I thought the break would answer that question for me. I thought like during this break I would find all the answers, but I found some answers. I didn't find every answer to those questions, and I feel like I'll never ever stop asking those questions as long as I live, because like as life happens, like things change and you change, and I'll always be asking myself like these things. So I feel like I guess like I don't know if it's like a pro or con, but if you kind of take the break thinking you're going to find an answer, you might not find it. You might find a different answer. You might find, or maybe you might find the answer, but like if you're hoping to like, you might not necessarily figure it all out. I guess is what you're saying. Like it's not like the one end all solution. If you feel like taking a break is going to solve that. I also thought that I was going to figure myself out by the end of it, but I figured more about myself, but I still like I'm still figuring out a lot about myself even now. And I realize I will always be feeling that way, like always trying to learn about myself, figure it out. So yeah, I guess that's also advice I would give, right? Like if you want to take a break and you're hoping that it's going to solve this big thing, like like it might not necessarily do that.
Yeah, I think I see what you're saying there too. I agree. Like I think you're like, I'm going to figure all these things out, or like figure out what's next. And I think that is just life is that journey, right? And I do look at it as like, I wonder if we're getting it faster, right? Like when you're like, you obviously needed something, you needed some change, and that was the change that you chose to go down. And I think like it's unexpected what you learn from that, which is really kind of cool. But yeah, you don't know exactly what to expect. And then you just kind of roll with it and you're like, oh, I'm going to figure everything out. And I think fundamentally, I don't think that's even possible. I think like to the day we die, it's like you're constantly figuring out things. I'm always learning new things. I feel like my kids teach me things that I'm just like, wow, I'm learning things about myself through them, which is really cool. So that's definitely a good call out. Another one I was going to say, hearing Cole saying like, oh, I have all this time. And I think, Jennifer, you said that too. Okay. I feel that as well. I think that's sometimes a blessing and a curse. I'll kind of share why. It's like, I have all this freedom to go do a ton of things. And then it's like, sometimes I'm almost like overwhelmed by the freedom to go do all the things. And then you're also brought up with the like, the money issue, it's like, well, a lot of things cost money. Like I would love to go travel the world. It's like, well, I have responsibilities where I have to help my kids and, be home for them. So that's, harder. Or, oh yeah, it costs money to travel the world. Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't have any money coming in. How do you do that? And so like, there's a lot of those things that also kind of come to play. Like money is definitely an important factor. And then the time, like it was weird, but I've learned that I have to be a little bit thoughtful on like, how do I want to spend my time, right? It's like, I actually sometimes block time where it's so funny. I'm like, I wanted to get away from the calendar, but I'm actually putting time in my calendar to say like, here's where I'm going to kind of spend some of that time to just, get the most out of what I'm trying to do in this time off. And then another factor on the time was I tried this years ago. It was must have been around 10 years ago, I think. It was actually right when I moved out to the Bay Area from Canada. I was tired. I was like, I'm just going to take a break. I'll find a job eventually. It's, engineering jobs were just blowing up everywhere. So I was like, I am going to just, move, get settled, maybe take I think I set 3 months aside that I was going to take off. I made it to about a month. I was like, I'm bored. I'm like, and I was even building some side project. I was keeping myself busy, but I was just, it just wasn't doing it. So I'm impressed with myself that I've held myself accountable this time around where I'm like, I do need the time.
I'm also impressed, Ryan, because I don't know if you remember, I told you that Jem and I had made a bet on when we thought you might return to work, and I've already lost the bet. Mind you, you've done a lot of creative stuff since then, and like I think one of the hardest part I hear that I relate to from both of your situations is finding time to just sit with yourself. Like not go find food, not go to the gym or exercise, not be with your wife, your kids, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, but really just time to like sit on the couch, put down TikTok, and just ask yourself, how am I feeling right now? And for Jennifer to do that and like write it down, I think is a really important step. I haven't always been good at that, but what this time has allowed me to do is just like have those moments where I'm sitting and I'm realizing I'm distracting myself from how I feel right now. How do I feel? And that's a big thing in today's culture. We distract ourselves 24 hours a day, 7 days a week from how we're actually feeling because it's hard to actually feel what we're feeling. And then the other thing I'll say that really resonated with me is like budgeting and getting into that mindset of taking a break is actually a lot of work. For me, it was a lot of work to figure out one big lifestyle change to another because when you work in tech, you have these privileged salaries and the money's coming in every month. You're not thinking about dining out. You're not thinking about your entertainment. You're living. And now things cost money and the expensive dog food is going to eat me out of house before the cheaper dog food. And so I'm making these rational decisions in my mind for the first time. And I had to set a budget. So I asked ChatGPT, I was like, hey, here's how much money I have saved up to prepare for this journey. Here's how long I would like to spend on this journey. How much could I spend each month and still stay within my budget? And you really have to think about, kind of the upper and lower bounds of that because I would like to be able to do this for a while. I don't want to just crash out and burn in a month because I spent all my money. And that's a big change. Budgeting is hard, especially if you've never done it before.
That's a good one. Asking ChatGPT. I kind of wish I did that.
I mean,
But
I feel like I spend most of my time now just like ChatGPT's open and I'm like, it does help those decisions.
For me, it was like I just told it all of my financial background and it was like, here's how many months we think you could survive. And I like took a more safe approach. I added some buffer because you always have to account for emergencies as well. I think that's important for people to realize. You can be on this break and my dog might need surgery. And so I would hate to have to jump into a job a month from now.
yeah, I think it makes you I should think it made me appreciate money more again. Like especially when you start working for years and you kind of just forget what it felt like to be a poor broke college student. But then I kind of felt like being a broke college student. I was like, right, this is what it was like to not have money coming in. But no, yeah, like truly budgeting. I remember like going through my Excel sheet and I just like, okay, no money's coming in. I gotta like, nope, all these subscriptions gotta go. Like, I'm not gonna be like spurting. I mean, I still, enjoy life. Like, I took trips and I went out. But yeah, definitely you can't just blow through it all in one go because you're going to find yourself in a very bad place financially.
But I think what you said there, Jennifer, is exactly the right mindset too, where it's like what I see there, or at least what I'm pulling from that and kind of reflecting on my own part of it. I like the aspect of thinking about like what's important to you. Like you revisit your expenses and look back and say like, what's important? Like what is actually bringing me happiness? Like if your subscription to YouTube brings you happiness, then yeah, you're gonna prioritize that. But I think that there's a lot of things that come into play that you're like, I don't really need this. I'm paying for it, but I didn't really enjoy it. Or like for me, saying like I was eating out all the time, I'm like, it was to the point where like, I should enjoy eating out. Like that should be a good thing. But it was just like I just need food, and it's things that you start to reflect on those things. You're like, I don't actually. That didn't bring me happiness. Like the whole money doesn't bring happiness thing is like never really made sense to me. And then you kind of start thinking about it, you're like, yeah, when you actually budget it and figure out what's important to you, there's a lot of things there you're like, I didn't even care that I had that.
Yeah. That's such a good call out, Ryan, because like I felt the same way. Like, yeah, money doesn't buy happiness. It does make things a lot easier, like just survival needs. But in terms of like when I've been at my most happiest, it hasn't necessarily been when I've been spending money or had money. It was like I was doing the things that I love, the things that enriched, and hearing you describe like creative outlets and hearing Jennifer describe like spending time with the people that matter. When you're just so occupied with whatever is happening next, it's just so hard to realize that you're missing out on that, or that like you said, Ryan, take it for granted. Like you were probably like, what am I eating for dinner tonight? It's so hard to pick and choose. Whereas now it's like if you're only eating out like a few nights a week, it's a lot more special, and you're like, oh, I really want to go to this place because I know I won't get the opportunity again for a little while.
Yeah, there's like a new sense of appreciation for like things, and you're not
Yeah.
overindulging anymore. You're like very intentional with like what you're spending on, what you're doing. And it's funny because you're kind of like forced to, but in a way, it's like better to do it that way than what you're
Yeah.
doing before.
Now, Jennifer, you're back to work. So you have a job. You went, you followed your mom's advice that you're like, you're going to have to get a job at some point. Was it tough going back? Like you mentioned, like people, you're worrying about getting the question of like, why did you take a break? Like when you're getting interviews, like anything that was interesting when you started interviewing again?
Well, yeah, I feel like for me, I remember when quitting, I was like, this is not the job market to quit in. I was like, you're right. But then I quit in it. So I was like, and then I was actually in the job market where you didn't want to be in. And I was like, oh yeah, they're right. This is not the job market to me, because it was rough.
Oh.
And like I'm in a different position where I was like junior, don't have a lot of experience. So like I'm fighting all these other applicants that are also trying to break into tech or also in junior. So it was very hard to get a lot of opportunities. Actually did not get a lot of questions on about like, well, actually, no, I got a few why I left, and I did explain to them. And I got lucky with the role I got. It kind of started as like a freelance role and kind of grew into kind of like a full-time thing. So it was a little different than like just applying and working. But I would say like now that I'm working in I did come in more with like a refreshed mentality and healthier. I feel a lot healthier, and try to like keep a lot of those habits that I kind of developed during the time period I was taking a break with me. So like those financial habits, I actually don't really overindulge anymore. I went to mentality was like, I'm poor. Like I'm poor, I'm poor, I'm poor. And so when I started working, I was like, I'm still poor. I still like try not to spend that much. I'll still like look at price tags. I'm like, do I really need this? Like, do I actually need this? And I think about it, I'm like, no, I don't need this. So that's helped. And then I'll think about, like, do I need this? Like, do I really want this? And then I'll pay for it. And that's good enough for me. So like a lot of those things carried over, and I do feel like I'm at a point where I can like give 100% again, and like I feel like I can perform better. And then kind of still fighting between like I'm still like kind of figure out how to not get to that point again. So like recognizing what those signs are. And I looked at the journal where I felt, so when I started feeling that way, like I read it back and I look at that journal, like I never want to feel that way again. Like I never want to get to that point. So whatever I can do to not get to that point, I'll like do it. And that's really just having a healthy balance and recognizing when I'm about to burn out. And like even recently I got a little burnout again and I was like, you know what, I'm not gonna work. I'm gonna take a little break and just like kind of it'll probably be like a never ending battle between like getting to that point of burnout and like stopping before I get there and having that journal to remind myself constantly like remember like where you were and where you don't want to be again and like how far you've come. And I think that also was the break gave me kind of like the confidence to do that, and that's why I feel confident if I do take a break again, I'll be okay. That leap is special. I feel like when you take that break, it's a special leap, and the confidence you get from that will carry over. And I feel that way right now. My job now. If I do take another leap, I feel confident I'll be okay too. So that's like the things I've kind of realized and kind of went to the next role. So it's nice. Like you kind of feel like everything will be okay, and you know at what point when it's not okay and what you can do about that.
I love hearing that. That makes me feel a lot better about my decision that it's like, okay, that's good. It sounds like and like you developed some great tools and like are still leveraging those tools to this day. And also I think what I'm hearing, I think I know the answer to it, or maybe I'm just going to answer is it doesn't sound like you regret taking the break.
I do not regret taking a break. I will hope everyone at one moment in their life takes a career break because you just spend so much of your life taking it. Like there's this like chart. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll show it later, but like it's like a chart and it just kind of breaks down all weeks of your life and it kind of divides like different points of your life, and a lot of it's spent on your career and then like next chunks of retirement. And it's just crazy that like you do most of your life just working and you never take a break. Like that just doesn't sound very nice. And I think it's just kind of crazy. Like when I read that, I looked at that chart, I was like, what? Like that's so much of my life just like spent on working. And yeah, I don't regret it. I think the only thing I regret is I wish I talked to like my boss about how I was feeling. I feel like I might have just pulled a fast one over them, but I think I was just so in my own, like I wasn't in this headspace to think clearly to tell them that. So if I were to go back, that'd be the only thing to change. And I do wonder like what would have happened if I didn't quit. But then I feel like if I worked, I would have always wondered what would have happened if I did quit. So it's kind of like the path I chose, and I'm glad I went with this one. Like I think I got to grow so much and learn so much, and I don't think it set me back at all. I think I'm better now than I would have been if I just kind of suffered through that pain and tried to toughen it out. I think I would have like a part of me would have died or something. You would have hit another breaking point. And I feel like when you put yourself through that kind of suffering, like you're just, at that point it's bad for your health, and like that's not good for anybody. So
yeah, it's interesting because it sounds like you had developed some skills that taught you better introspection, better like just being in touch with your feelings, being in touch with your values and goals, and having those tools and time to really work on what's important and prioritizing in your mind what's important. It sounds like that set you up for better success, but also like you're taking that into the next situation and this is never going to happen again. And maybe something else will happen. Maybe you just decide, okay, like I'm in a totally different mindset right now and I just feel like taking a break because now just feels like the time to take a break. It might just teach you things that you realize were already there that you just didn't know how to read. And so I like hearing that from you, Jennifer, because I'm going through that right now. I'm like, I feel myself like I need to take a nap right now. And until this break, I didn't know what that felt like. I was just kind of burning through it. And like you said, like there's a calendar of weeks in your life and we spend so much time at work. I would ask the question, like, how would you treat your personal life? How would you treat to the same degree that you treat your work? Like, how would you make that your top priority if you're going to take a break?
I actually have a question for you guys. Although I know Cole's still kind of early, but I think this is something I was curious about when I was talking to you, Ryan, initially. I feel like I came to my own realizations, and I was wondering what are the things you guys have realized as you guys are going through, your break. Many things we haven't touched on. that you would like kind of share? Because I feel like for me, I'm at a point in my career, it's like really early, and you guys are kind of like further out. So I feel like for me, it's like kind of looking into the future. Like if I was like, you know, a couple years older and in like a more higher point of my career, and I took a break, like what would be the kind of things I would be thinking about? And for me, when I see you guys, that would be kind of like me if I were a couple years ahead at your like where you guys are right now. So that's kind of like, okay, well, what are you guys thinking about? Because I feel like I'm thinking about different things. So I'm like curious what you guys think about or realize where you guys are now.
Yeah, no, I think that's such a great question. I think that for me, I'm still discovering some of the things in general. But I think that there are things that I think make it easier in some ways. Not so much that, okay, I have kids, so that's, you know, another a constraint that I have to think about. I can't just be like, I'm out, and like I could just go live on the street, or, you know, it's like I have responsibilities. So that changes some aspect of it. But then also I think I'm further in my career too, that it feels a little bit easier where I'm not like when you were earlier, like I need that experience to get other jobs, right? Like, and that can be really difficult, or that probably comes into those challenges that you're like worrying about that. Like, am I giving up the experience? And I think what I'm reflecting on, because I think I even still struggle with that one, is like, oh, am I giving up pieces of my career? I don't think I am. I think that I can jump back in and pick it back up. It might even be that like it takes me a little bit while to get back into the swing of things. I'm not sure, but I'm comfortable with that. I think because this is so powerful, and it's like I think that all those fears for me are going away. I don't know that it changes much later in the career, but I think those are some call outs where it's like, yeah, I've have more experience. I've been doing it longer. Maybe it's I change careers completely because I've done it for a while. Like I still don't know those types of things that could come out.
I think that's a good call out though, Ryan. Like between where you are in your career, sometimes it's easier to get new jobs and sometimes it's easier to take a break and come back and refresh yourself and jump back in. And sometimes it can be harder if you're earlier in your career and companies want to see more, you know, endurance. They want to see more experience from your resume before taking a chance. And that's an important call out to make. But I'll also say in this industry, it's always revolving. Things ebb and flow. It's not impossible for everyone. But the one thing I think that's important to realize is it's always designed to tell us to move forward. This industry always tells us move forward, move up, get a promotion, next level. It is always okay to continue doing what you're already doing, and it is always okay to take a step back. I think many people find themselves in traps where they just keep moving forward, and it's like a hamster wheel of burnout. You're just chasing what you were already doing and what you're doing next. And so that's the one thing I would say is it's always okay to take a step back or keep doing what you're already doing.
So in a way, it kind of gives you like where you guys are, there's already like kind of like confidence that for being able to take a break and being able to jump back in a lot easier. Okay. Yeah, I think, I definitely echo that because I feel like for me, it did feel like I was so early that this was like more of a risk for me if I just kind of just left when I barely had any experience. Yeah, it's nice to know that like if down the line that I could make that decision and I would feel more comfortable because there's a lot more confidence that it would be okay career-wise to take that break because there's more, on my resume, there's like more show than if I took it a lot earlier. So I guess that's a big thing to consider for people who might be taking a break if it's like a little earlier in their career rather than later.
I think that's good to consider, but I think also like Jennifer, it sounds like you made it work too. So I think I want to, that resonates with me as like, I hope our listeners see that and that it is possible for them too, regardless of where they are in their career.
I mean, this is awesome. Jennifer, thank you so much for helping even just Cole and myself see where the journey can help lead us since you've gone through this all. So thank you. That was awesome. I think this is a great time for us to dive into picks. In each episode of the Front End Happy Hour podcast, we like to share things that we found interesting that want to share with all of you. Cole, you want to start us off? What kind of picks do you have for today?
Sure. My first pick today is I will be spending more time in the sun with all this free time, and sun protection is really important. I think like your skin is your biggest organ and it has the biggest impact on your life overall. So one of my favorite sunblocks to use is called Supergoop. Play Everyday Lotion
Super.
SPF 50. It smells really good. It goes on really good. And I'm somebody who hates like textures and wearing sunscreens. So this is one of the best ones that I like to use. And as a result, I will live probably a little longer and feel a little better in my body. Sunscreen is super important. And then my second pick for today is I'm going to go with one of my dogs. I'm going to go with Coco because Alfie gets way too much attention and love. And Coco is honestly just like so chill. She's ready to go out and have a good day. So after this episode, I'm going to take some dogs and go and sit with ourselves at a park. And those are my two picks.
Right on. Jennifer, what do you have
Yeah.
for us to share?
Yeah, I think your dogs love that you're not working anymore.
I think they're more excited about it than I am.
They're like, oh my God, you're home all the time. I guess my pick, it's actually a book I'm reading now that I think is like, maybe I would recommend it to y'all too. Or maybe you guys have heard of it. It's called Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life. And was it? Yeah, I think I kind of wish I read this book during the break. Just kind of finding like you're kind of like you're finding your purpose in life. And I'm reading it now. I'm still kind of reading it, and I wish I read it during the break because I feel like those were the questions I was asking myself, and I feel like that book would have helped me kind of, think about it in a maybe different way, or kind of just take some learnings from people who obviously have the same thoughts. So that would be my pick.
Right on. All great picks. I'm actually just going to share the one pick, which was just mentioning that commencement speech at Stanford that Steve Jobs gave years ago. He said a lot of great things in that, but that one quote in particular definitely is so in line with this podcast episode. So that will be my pick for this episode. Jennifer, thank you so much. This was amazing conversation. I feel like I could have gone and talked hours on this right now. Like, I feel like it's just such a topical topic for me as well as Cole. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights. If people want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter. It should be like at Jennifer_Tieu, Tieu. Also on LinkedIn, same. Yeah, I'm pretty open. Just hit my DMs and I'll get back to you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jennifer. It was great having you. You can find us at frontendhappyhour.com, on Twitter at frontendhh, YouTube at frontendhh. And leave us a review where you like to listen to podcasts. I know it's been helping others discover the podcast. We also like to know what we're doing well and what we can improve on. So please leave us a review.